Okay. So if it is visible to all of you, let me start. I am audible and visible to all the
Yes, sir.
participants.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
please.
So the topic assigned today is writing a project proposal and funding sources. Without wasting much time, let me go to the topic directly. Writing a project proposal and funding sources. There's a famous statement made by one of the leading scientists of this time, who was the chairman of the National Institute of Health, US government, Norm Braverman. He said that there is no grantsmanship that will turn a bad idea into a good one. But there are many ways to disguise a good idea. Therefore, even before you start writing a project proposal, we should take ideas from experienced colleagues who have already won some externally funded projects and have successfully completed the projects. We should take ideas from them, how to write a project proposal, what should be the priorities in terms of ideas, and how to orient our programs with the funding agency's requirements. We should discuss with successful applicants regarding all these aspects and look for new solutions to old problems. So, as I frequently say to my students, that research is nothing but research. We are researching for better solutions to the already existing problems, for which maybe many other solutions are already known. Even if a particular problem has been solved by someone, I think some of the questions still remain to answer. So many a times, even if look into any existing problem in a society, maybe social, maybe clinical, maybe financial, maybe any sort, you find any solution presently we have may not give you satisfactory answer to all the queries. There are many discontentments and unanswered questions. So if you approach with a novelty for finding out some alternative solutions to the same problem, that can pave the avenue for taking up research. So research is nothing but finding new solutions to old problems. That we must have to agree. So to start writing a research proposal, first we have to have a good idea. So poor ideas, if your idea for writing a proposal is not good enough, that it cannot be successful even if you package it well. You may write it well, you may follow the necessary guidelines given by the funding agencies, and you may also write it in a manner which is very sort of fine to read. Everybody will be satisfied in reading your paper, but it will not be successful in getting the grant. Similarly, if you package something not in a way which is acceptable to the reviewers, but your idea is good, then also you may not be successful. So normally we should try to improve the packaging also. You should have a good idea, but at the same time, you are to package the good idea in such a way that it can draw attention of the reviewers and the reviewers get satisfied with your idea for funding. That means even if you have got a good idea, you may not be successful unless you prepare the project proposal in a better way. So today we shall be discussing only about how to package a good idea, because I cannot give you good ideas in all branches of science, or I cannot deal with any idea in humanities or in commerce because I'm not having any expertise in those lines. So ideas have to evolve out of your own knowledge and expertise, and by going through relevant literature in your subject. You have to come up with a good idea, And of course, to develop the idea, as I already said, you may have to consult with successful people who have already won some external funds through some project proposals with some good ideas they had. Now find the right program which is giving a suitable platform for you to put up your proposal with the idea that you have. Because your idea may not be suitable for funding by any agency. You have to find out the best agency or the best program under an agency which mostly suits your idea. So you have to ask the question, does your idea fit to the stated purpose of the program? Because every agency, whenever they come up with a call for proposal, they will give you a guideline, and also they will speak out the trust areas of research in which they are going to fund you. You have to read carefully the call for proposal and first try to find out whatever idea you have in your own expertise, does it fit to the stated purpose of the program as it has been mentioned in the call for proposal. Try to find out abstracts of some of the previously funded projects under the said program. Normally, that is available either from the funding sources itself. Some of the funding agencies used to give you idea about the previously funded programs, or you may get it from your colleagues or from successful people in your neighborhood who have won projects from similar funding. So you try to get the abstracts of those funding to get an idea what kind of research proposals you should submit under that particular program. Then discuss with the experienced seniors to relate your idea to the program priorities. Sometimes it happens that you may have an idea, but it may not directly suit, or it may not be compatible to the particular program advertised by the funding agency. But by simple modification of the idea, you may reorient your idea to fit into the program that has been advertised. So for that, you need to consult with your seniors how to modify your idea so that you can apply for funding under a particular program of a particular agency. That is why funding the right program for submission of a research proposal is the first thing to be done by the researcher. You should not unnecessarily attempt to get funding under various programs of different agencies without knowing in detail about the priority areas that have been already decided by the funding agency under a particular program. You must have to read thoroughly, as I said, the entire call for proposals to find out whether your idea fits into the particular program or not. Otherwise, there will be wastage of time and energy. If you submit the program to a particular funding agency under a call for proposal to which your idea does not fit. So therefore, find the right program. Don't waste time applying to a wrong program. And also evaluate whether your personal credentials or your expertise and experience, working conditions, fulfill the eligibility criteria of the investigator that has been mentioned in the call for proposal. Many a times we see that a very good research proposal may not be granted because it is found that as per the eligibility criteria laid down in the call for proposal, the investigators are not fit to get the grant. Although the proposal is good, the reviewers' comments are good, but even then at the last moment, if your credentials do not fulfill the eligibility criteria that has been stated under the program, you may not get it. That is very unfortunate. Even I experienced such kind of situation many a time because I used to be in different committees, as has been said. Many a times, most of the funding agencies need certain eligibility criteria to be fulfilled by the investigator. So without looking into that, if a project is submitted, then even if the project is very good, the funding is not allowed to be given. So this is very unfortunate. That is why you please see if your credentials fit to the eligibility criteria as stated. So that is why you should study the call for proposal well to understand the main goals of the programs, to see whether your idea fits into the goals of the program, read the prescribed format thoroughly. And in this case, let me point out one thing. I had an experience of looking for the grants for some of my colleagues. At one point of time, I saw that the proposal was almost acceptable for the funding agency, but at the last moment, it was not considered because of one fact, that the format in which the project proposal was submitted was a format which was circulated around, say, 3 years back. But after that, the particular format has been upgraded or revised. But the investigator did not look into the recent advertisement, but he obtained the format from a colleague who was successfully getting a grant under the program 3 years back. So ultimately, for this reason only, the particular project was rejected. So this happens many a time. We used to collect the format of application from some successful investigators among our faculty members or our colleagues, and we do not look for the real advertisement against which we are going to submit the proposal. Maybe the format is already revised by the funding agency and there are many new points raised, but you have not filled those up because you followed a old format. So ultimately, for that reason only, your project may be rejected. So you please read the prescribed format thoroughly, collect and update relevant literature on the proposed topic, and go through the relevant literature on the particular topic or the idea that you are pursuing to the extent possible. Try to collect the relevant literature updated. Develop a timeline for the project preparation. There is one more important point. Many a times, we get the information about the advertisement or call for proposal late. So maybe around 1 week time is left for submission of the proposal. Hurriedly we prepare the project, and maybe we are waiting for the last day to come for submission of the proposal. So if you prepare the proposal hurriedly like this way, there is a possibility of many errors remaining in the project proposal. So because of lack of time, it might not have been possible for you to look into the details of the proposal, and that is why many errors might have been left. So that may be the reason why the reviewers did not like it. So that is why always you should make a timeline for preparation of the proposal, preferably 3 to 4 weeks before submission deadline. So normally we advise the new investigators to know in detail about the different programs being launched by different funding agencies and get acquainted with the different programs even before they decide about submission of the proposal. Because if you go to the websites of different funding agencies, you can know what are the different programs launched by the particular funding agency, under which what kind of research proposals are accepted for funding. So you get an idea beforehand and get ready with your idea and a draft of your proposal even before the call for proposal comes up. And thereafter, you can modify the proposal as per the recent advertisement when it is necessary. In that case, you get sufficient time for drafting and revising your proposal. If you rush preparation of the proposal, as I said, it will be difficult for you to avoid errors. Usually, writing a winning proposal often needs 1 month to many months. So that is why, as I said, that before even the call for proposal is coming, you can start drafting your proposal. Call for proposals may contain the criteria that will be used to evaluate the proposals, because reviewers are also given certain guidelines by the funding agencies to review and evaluate the proposals. So most of the funding agencies usually spell out the criteria for selection in the call for proposals. Go through the criteria very thoroughly so that you can put up your proposal in such a way that it fulfills all the criteria laid down under the call for proposal. Typically review the criteria because normally certain review criteria are commonly applied by most of the funding agencies. These are some of the common review criteria adopted by most of the funding agencies. Number one, scientific merit of the project, relevance to program priorities, novelty of the proposed approach, qualifications of the project personnel, planning and admission of the project, whether achievable within the time frame. So these are the 6 important aspects which are usually considered during evaluation by the reviewer. Your proposal should have scientific merit. What does it mean? Means the idea or the hypothesis based on which you are proposing the project should have the scientific basis. You must have to go through the relevant literature thoroughly and try to find out what are the gaps in that particular area, what are the unanswered questions in that particular subject area, and you should try to build your project so that it can answer those unanswered queries. It should be able to fill up the gaps in understanding in the particular subject. So that will increase the scientific merit of the project. So it should also be relevant to the priorities set by the funding agency in the call for proposal. It should have some sort of novelty. It should be a new approach, or maybe the methodology is new, or maybe you are going to do it in an area where it was not pursued earlier. In this case, let me tell you that in the northeastern region of India, there are many areas of research where everything that you do is novel, because most of the areas are unexplored. Every now and then you can come across some news that some people have come up with some new species or strain of an organism in this northeastern region, because it is the hotspot of biological diversity. There are many geographical areas within Northeast where scientific exploration to many areas have not been so far done. So everything can be novel. So you need not worry that this kind of research has been done elsewhere, so I cannot do it here. You can repeat the same in your area of research, but there should be some sort of novelty in your approach, or it should be trying to answer some unanswered question in the subject area. The qualification of the project personnel is also important. As I said, the eligibility criteria has to be studied properly, and you should plan the research in a better way. Your work plan should be given in detail, and it should be achievable within the target period. Say normally the projects are given for 3 to 5 years time. As the case may be, you are trying to accommodate your work plan within the time frame allowed. Understand the review process. You should appreciate the fact that each of the reviewer is normally given by the funding agency a number of projects together to be reviewed. When I review a project for DBT, DST, ICAR, SERB, or any funding agency, normally we get a number of proposals at a time, 5-6 proposals at a time to review, because these funding agencies used to get more than 500-600 projects under a particular call for proposal, and within a stipulated period of time they have to review, get them reviewed, and finally select the successful proposals. So they do have a reviewers panel consisting of maybe 5 to 10 experts in the field. So they will send at least 5 to 6 projects to a single reviewer for review within a stipulated period of time. Maybe they'll be giving 15 days time or 20 days time, as the case may be. So this is a big burden for the reviewers also. In addition to their normal duties and responsibilities, they are going to review the project proposals. So they will try to stick to the guidelines mentioned in the call for proposals, whether the investigators are following them or not. Preparing the proposal logically and clearly helps the reviewers so that they can make a decision within a short period of time. If you do not follow the guidelines given, if you do not write the proposal logically and clearly, then without going into the technical details of the proposal, whatever or however good the idea may be, it may not be acceptable to reviewer. So as I said, you must have to thoroughly study the guidelines and try to write the proposal as per the guidelines and use clear language so that you can spell out your idea logically and clearly. Please remember, to the degree you make a reviewer work hard, the probability of your proposal being funded decreases exponentially. If it is very difficult for the reviewer to understand your proposal, if he finds it hard to apprehend the idea that you have, then probably you'll not be getting interested to approve your proposal for funding. So harder it is for the reviewer to understand, lesser is the possibility of getting the approval. So write the proposal logically and clearly. The first thing you have to decide is the title of the project based on the idea that you have. So as has been already pointed out by Dr. Talukdar, the title should be attractive enough and it should give an overall idea about the kind of research that you are going to do and the final objective of the proposal. So it should be appealing and attractive for the reviewer. If it is not interesting and appealing for the reviewer, many reviewers are there who will not go through the rest part of the proposal if he is given the task of reviewing a number of proposals together. So it should be appealing, interesting, and it should reflect the idea that you have with its objective. So it should give a general sense of what you are investigating. Let me give some examples of certain unsuccessful titles and what are the drawbacks in them. So these are two proposals which were rejected by me during the review process. I'll not mention where from they came. Say one project was submitted on cancer in Northeast. The title was coined by the investigator like this: studied on the effect of certain environmental factors on causation of cancer in the Northeast. You see, overall, the entire title is not depicting actually what the investigator is going to do. It is something like a title of a popular article only. He is writing studies on. Any kind of research is a study only. So most of the time we do not like to have this kind of wording in the title. You can directly say effect of. Don't write studies on or a study on. Not necessary, because any kind of research is a study. Just write the title. Then he is writing certain environmental factors, but he is not pointing out what are the important environmental factors he is going to. Because these environmental factors may be relating to the climatic environment, time, temperature, humidity, and other factors. It may relate to certain social factors. It may relate to certain socio-economic factors. It may relate to food habits. It may relate to many other environmental factors which may be responsible for its effect on causation of cancer. Next question is, he is writing about cancer, but what kind of cancer? He is not emphasizing. Cancer is of various kinds, but whether he is going to study on a particular type or group of cancer, or he is going to take on research on any type of cancer in human being. Or even he is not referring to whether he is going to have his research in human beings or in animals. Nothing is evident from the topic. Similarly, he is also using a word northeast. Northeast is a very wide concept, big concept. The northeastern region of India includes 8 different states. Now, many a time we see research proposals with this kind of title using the term northeast. But if we go into the detailed project proposal, we see that the work plan is designed in such a way that samples will be collected only from, say, 1 or 2 districts of Assam. The investigator will be collecting samples from some parts of the neighboring areas of Guwahati city, but he is using the term northeast. How only Guwahati city or its neighboring areas can represent the entire northeast? If you are mentioning a particular geographical area, your sampling should represent the entire geographical area. Your sampling should be done in such a way that it represents the entire area, the diversities that exist in the area. So you should not use the term northeast if you are using samples collected from only a specific part of the northeast or specific district or specific state of the northeast. You can specifically say in which geographical area you are going to do the research. And if you are using the term northeast, you should have collection of representative samples from all the different states of the northeast, representing the geoclimatic variations. Then similarly, this is another project submitted, which is with the title Immunomodulation of Goat Spermatozoa to Increase Fertility Rate of Frozen Semen. So he has used some very good terminology in framing the title, but the overall title is not clear enough. So immunomodulation is a process which implies to stimulation of the immunity by applying certain factors, maybe chemical factors or other factors, which will non-specifically stimulate immunity in an individual. But if you are referring to immunomodulation of both spermatozoa, how immunity can be achieved by spermatozoa? Immunomodulation can be done in respect of the immunity achieved by a particular animal or human being, not referring to the subject of goat spermatozoa. Similarly, fertility rate enhancement is in relation to a particular species or an animal. It cannot refer to the fertility rate of frozen semen. So this kind of, so to say, unclear or ambiguous type of title also is not attractive for the reviewer. And by looking into the title itself, the reviewer will know that the investigator is not at all clear in his approach in writing the project proposal. That's why there's a chance that the reviewer will outright reject such proposal without going into the details of the proposal. So a concise title with clear-cut sense should be there. So the most primary and important section of the entire proposal is the project summary or the abstract, as has been already pointed out by Dr. Talukdar sir very rightly. So this is the only section of the research proposal all the reviewers will at least read. If he or she does not read the entire project proposal, at least the reviewers will read the project summary and abstract. If the title is little attractive, then you will go to the project summary and abstract directly without going into the details of the proposal. So it captures the essence of the proposal. It must be clear, concise, well articulated, and logical. Many a time we do mistake in this. I have seen my students doing this when they write the proposal for the first time. Some people do this mistake that they write the abstract or the summary at the beginning. That is not correct. You should write the full proposal first, then come up with the abstract or summary, briefly summarizing all the parts of the proposal at last. That is the best way to do. Similarly, some people, what they do while writing summary or abstract, because they know that it has got a summary of all the different important aspects of the proposal, they will pick up some lines from here and there, few lines from introduction, few lines from objective, few lines from methodology, few lines from relevance and other parts of the study, then put it up in a haphazard way in the summary or abstract. Ultimately, it does not reflect anything. So that kind of writing summary should not be done. So summaries should typically reflect the objective of the proposal, the methodology that you are going to follow, and what is the expected result. So that should be briefly stated in the abstract clearly. So it should be a short but informative background. So it should have a short but informative background. It should clearly state the hypothesis. It should state the objectives, state the impact, significance, or the novelty of the proposal, and also you should avoid technical or condensed phrasing of the project. So it should reflect the real summary of the proposal, starting from the statement of the background or the basis of taking up that proposal. What is the hypothesis? I'll come to hypothesis, how the hypothesis can be framed. Then what are the objectives, and what will be the expected result or the impact of the study? Where is the novelty of the project? All these things are to be mentioned briefly in the summary. I'll come to other important sections, but before that, let me tell you about the hypothesis. So a clearly stated hypothesis is very important for framing the title as well as the objective of the proposal. And in fact, the entire research proposal is written centering around the hypothesis that you have. How to drive a hypothesis, how to create a hypothesis. Let me give you one or two ideas. Say, for example, now we are observing that in the global scenario of the ongoing pandemic COVID-19, there are a lot of variation in terms of morbidity and mortality occurring in different geographical areas or countries of the world. If you look in the latest literature or statistics, you will find that while the fatality rate due to COVID-19 is as high as 8.4% in US, in countries like US, 7.7% in Italy, or for that matter in Brazil, it is quite low in India. In India, it has been only around 4.4% so far. But again, within India, there are a lot of variations. Say, for example, mortality induced by COVID-19 in the city of Mumbai is so far the highest in India. It is almost around 7.7%. Whereas mortality induced by COVID-19 in Assam is very low. So far, it is only around 0.4%. So why there is these sort of variation in mortality? Okay, so based on this observation, one can clearly make a hypothesis for a research proposal. That means we can think of what may be the possible reasons for this significant variation in terms of morbidity and mortality caused by the same disease in the same, so to say, geographical condition, or maybe within the same country. So for that, we will have to observe the pattern of morbidity and mortality, and also at the same time, we shall have to think of the possible regions which may be causing such kind of variation. So the question really comes whether the organism or the virus itself is changing in its character. The kind of virus which is in circulation in US, or for that matter in other countries of the world where mortality is high, whether it is same as that of the virus which is in circulation in India. Similarly, whether the virus which is in circulation in Mumbai or other parts of the South India, like Chennai, or in Gujarat, or in Delhi, where mortality is more, whether it is same as that of the virus which is in circulation in Assam. So these are some questions that we have. So to answer that question, we may have a hypothesis that based on our observation, we hypothesize that there can be some variation in the property of the virus in circulation in different parts of the country which is responsible for variation in morbidity and mortality pattern. So that is the hypothesis. That is the hypothesis. Based on the basic hypothesis, we shall go further ahead to coin our objectives, and then we shall go for framing our work plan based on the objectives. Okay, what will be our objectives based on that hypothesis? We shall have to isolate the virus, or maybe we shall have to go for whole genome sequencing of the virus based on the samples collected from different regions, and then we shall study the genotype of the virus. We will see the variability in terms of mutation, what kind of mutations are occurring in the virus in circulation in different geographical areas, and whether we can find variable genotypes in variable geographical areas, whether the genotype of the SARS-CoV-2 virus responsible for COVID-19 that is in circulation in Assam or neighboring areas is similar to the genotype in circulation in Maharashtra and other areas, or in US or Italy. So that can be studied. Already this kind of study has been taken up by many workers, even in India. So that will be the objective and the work plan. So based on the hypothesis, you can decide the objective precisely, and then you can frame the work plan in such a way that the methodology that you are adopting will be able to fulfill the objectives that has been laid down. So important sections of a project is the rationale, that is the justification or the background, then hypothesis, then objectives, then methodologies. As I said, the background or your observation will decide the hypothesis. Based on the hypothesis, you are to build the objectives, and based on the objectives, you are to choose the methodology which can fulfill the objectives, and then you can decide about the detailed work plan. And at last, you are to say, if you are successful in implementing the project, what are the expected outcomes or the impact of the project. Already I explained about hypothesis. I'll not go into detail about this once again. So hypothesis is the basic foundation of the research proposal. Now reviewers must be convinced that the goals or the objectives that you have stated reflect the major priorities of the program. It should correlate to the priorities of the program under the call for proposal. So unless your objectives are similar to the program objectives, it is not going to be acceptable. Then if the objectives are accomplished, the stated goals will be attained. So reviewers should be convinced that if your objectives are fulfilled, then you can attain the goal. Then if the stated methodology is followed, the objectives will be achieved. As I said, objectives are laid down, and based on the objectives, you are to decide which methodology will be suitable to get the objectives fulfilled. So expected results should be also directly related to the overall goals and priorities of the program. Then comes the budget. So budget should be prepared with strong justification. For each and every item that you are proposing in the budget, you should have proper justification. It is not that you need many things for your laboratory to be set up or to be strengthened. Without justification in relation to the proposed project, you are submitting a list of equipments to be purchased which have got no direct relation to the objective of the particular proposal you are submitting. Then it will be not considered by the reviewers or the funding agency. So all the equipments or other materials you propose under a research proposal should be required for implementation of the particular project. So you should have a strong justification against each of the items that you are proposing. Unreasonable budgets hurt the proposals. If you are proposing an unreasonable and exorbitant budget, then usually it may not be attractive, and reviewers may reject it outright. So keep the budget within the guidelines, because call for proposals also give detail about the heads under which the project funding will be available. So you have to look into the format and look for the heads under which the budget should be prepared, and you should accordingly prepare reasonably, justifying each and every budget proposal. But it should not be miser also. So normally, as we say normally, if you want a stun gun to be purchased, you should ask for a certificate or license for a double barrel gun. If you need a double barrel gun, you should ask for that means license for a stun gun, like that. So that means your proposal should be little higher than your expectation. Suppose you expect that your proposal can be implemented with a mega grant of 30 lakhs. Maybe you can raise the budget a little bit, around 10%, and ask for 10% more grant or 20% more grant, so that normally during the final approval, when the curtailment is done in budget, after the reduction of 10% or 20% also, you get the needed funding. So that kind of buffer may be kept, but of course, it should be quite reasonable. You should not be giving a very exorbitant proposal. Obtain critical input from experienced and successful colleagues. Always it is important. So you should always ask for the inputs on your research proposal after the draft is being made, at least from 3 experts. Let me name who are they. One is one who has significant expertise in this specific research area. So one should be from your own field of research in which he has got expertise or he is experienced enough in handling similar kind of projects. You let them read the draft proposal before being submitted, so that you can get the criticism and the inputs from the expert. Second expert you should consult is one who has only passing familiarity or less expertise in the subject in which you are proposing. Maybe he may be from the same subject area broadly. You are from botany background, he may be from botany itself, but his specialization is not in the subject area, specific subject area in which you are proposing. So a passing familiarity of the subject is there with the expert, but he is not really expert in the field. So we should have opinion or inputs collected from such kind of expert also. And the third one is a person who is an excellent writer. He may be from the field of humanities, he may be from the field of English or social sciences, or from any other area, who is a good writer. He can correct you in terms of writing the proposal so that it becomes comprehensive, it becomes clear, and it becomes more acceptable for the reviewers. So these 3 persons can help you in framing the project. Don't hesitate to ask for comments and criticisms from all these 3 persons so that you can improve the project before being submitted. Important points are: fill out the forms completely and correctly. Don't leave any particular column of the form without mentioning anything. Don't keep it blank. If it is not applicable in your case, simply write not applicable or does not arise. Simply write not applicable or does not arise, but don't leave it blank. Okay? Allow time for internal administrative requirements. So normally all the proposals are to be routed through the administrative head of the particular institute. So the administrator will also need some time to process the proposal in the usual way in the office, or he may also be busy somewhere to forward your proposal. So don't submit the proposal to your administrative head on the last day of submission, but keep at least few days before the deadline for the administrative so to say processing of the proposal. So that is always a good idea. Sometimes that happens. We were ready to submit the proposal on the last day, but my head of the department or head of the institute is absent on that day. He is on leave. Then what to do? There is nobody to just forward my proposal. So in that case, I'll be in difficulty. So always get it ready at least few days before the deadline. Some additional helpful hints: each section of the proposal should be linked together, as I said. Rationale for the study should be linked to the hypothesis. Hypothesis should be linked to the objective. Objective should be linked to the methodology. Methodology should be linked to the work plan detail and the expected outcome. Then avoid typographical, grammatical, and spelling errors. Many a times it becomes incomprehensible for the reviewers what the investigator wants to speak. So that is why I told you that you are to always take the help of some expert writer in writing the proposal. You are not confident enough in writing a good proposal, because all of us cannot be expert in all fields. We may be scientifically experts, but we may not be good writers. Our language may not be so much lucid or comprehensible. So always make the proposal errorless, typographically, grammatically, and spelling wise. Then use always large font size, make it easy to read. So that is a very simple matter. But if you type it out by using a font size of 10 or less than 10, then it is for people like us or people who are reviewers. They are normally aged persons beyond 60 years of age. So they will find it difficult to read it even. So use large fonts, at least 12 or more font size, and use Arial or Times New Roman if you are using a computer, so that it is readable. Include subheadings, include loss of spacing. Double spacing should be always taken, and subheadings should be always, it should not be in a narrative form. In every particular subsection, you can make some subheadings so that it becomes, your statement becomes more clear. Use high quality figures, if any. Then provide sufficient details in respect of methodology. That this is one aspect you should always keep in mind. Many times we find use of the term etc. in writing methodology, or you make a general statement that standard methods should be followed, but this is not a correct statement. Methodology should be provided in detail, which method you are going to follow, why you are going to follow that method. It should be clearly stated. Okay, in scientific methodology there is nothing called etc. All details up to the last method has to be provided so that it becomes comprehensible and it becomes repeatable. So present the drawbacks also and provide an alternative solution. Sometimes what happens, if you say that some specific methodology will be followed, there can be alternative methodology for the same work to be done. In that case, if you follow a particular method, you may fail to get the expected result. In that case, what will be your alternative approach? That should also be stated in the proposal, so that the reviewer feels that you know about the alternatives, and in case your first attempt fails, then you will go for some alternative methods, so that at least at the end of the experiment you get some expected results. Don't inflate the budget unnecessarily. As I already said, it should be adequate and reasonable. What are the most common criticisms? Most common criticisms from the reviewers are poorly written, not well justified, it does not justify in relation to the scientific problem, in relation to the experimental model, or relevance to program priorities or purpose. These are already stated in detail. I will not go to elaborate once again. So lacks of convincing preliminary data. This is one aspect you should know. That means preliminary data, preliminary information on the subject should be already available. You cannot explore a particular area in which you do not have sufficient information or sufficient knowledge. You must have to gather the relevant information for the published literature so that you can carry forward your research. Or if it is not sufficiently available, you should yourself do some preliminary work to have at least some primary data to justify taking up the research proposal. Say, for example, while exploring some areas of research where no preliminary data is available, you can do a preliminary survey work in your locality with limited sample size, get some baseline data available, maybe in less in number, tabulate them, analyze them, and get some information out of it. And that will convince the reviewer that you have already done some baseline work to have at least some information on the particular subject area in your locality. So that should be always graded. You may not have published work, but you must have to show that you have already carried forward some of the preliminary work in the line and you have the relevant expertise and knowledge. No hypothesis or poorly defined hypothesis. This is another important criticism. Or the research is not hypothesis driven. Objectives do not address hypothesis. There is no relation of the objective with the hypothesis. Hypothesis is something, but you are pointing out to certain objectives, you are laying down some objectives which are not relevant to the hypothesis, then it will be rejected. Objectives lack focus or too diffuse. It is also common criticism. Many a time we think that we should have too many objectives. Only one or two objectives may not be sufficient. It is not the case. Just reverse is the case. Your objectives should be focused and you should try to have only very few focused objectives. It may be only 1, 2 or 3 objectives, not more than that, because you have a limited time to fulfill the objectives. If you have a 3 years project having 10 numbers of objectives, then it cannot be achievable within that specific time limit. So it should be focused. Approaches and methods lack detail needed to evaluate potential for success. As I said, methodology should be as appropriate and as detailed as possible. Another criticism is investigator lacks expertise with given approach. They will see for your expertise on the subject from your given list of publications or your PhD thesis topic or any relevance to your idea or preliminary work that you have already done. So your particular project should be submitted in such an area where you have already developed some proven expertise. If you are not working so far in that particular subject area, you should always try to do some preliminary work, as I said, so that the reviewers are convinced that you have already developed the needed expertise to take on the particular investigation. Pitfalls not addressed means, as I said, what are the disadvantages of taking up your work and what are the possibilities of getting a negative result, you should always mention, and in such cases what may be the alternative solutions to your problem, that should also be spoken out. What will be the alternative methodology that you may follow? And sometimes it may be overly ambitious. As I said, you may have many objectives to be fulfilled, which is not possible to be fulfilled. It will be said that the project is overly ambitious, it cannot be fulfilled within the reasonable time frame. Then timeline is unrealistic. There is another criticism. So this is all about the framing of the project proposal. I think so far I have dealt with the different aspects of framing a project proposal for submission. I hope that I could deliver the things in a manner which is understandable to all of you. I'll discuss about all these things. You can put up questions regarding that after I complete the funding resources. Let me come to the second part of my deliberation now. Funding agencies. What are the funding agencies? So in India, there are some important funding agencies which fund research in science subjects, and of course there are very few funding agencies who fund for humanities. So I'll first deal with some of the funding agencies which provide funding towards science subjects, particularly those which are providing funding towards biological research, because I am mostly concerned with them. But at the same time, I also deal with some of the funding agencies providing funding towards other fields of research. So DBT, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, which is a part of the Ministry of Science and Technology, is one of the most resourceful funding agency, and they have many different schemes and programs under which they provide funding. So they provide funding for medical biotechnology, agriculture, animal and allied sciences, knowledge generation and discovery research, new tools and technologies, basic research in modern biology and bioinformatics, etc. So in here also, a person who is working in sociology, geography, psychology, etc. from humanity background can also apply in the knowledge generation discovery research. Although it is not directly related to the biotechnology, there is scope of application. Similarly, people from background of mathematics, statistics, and other scientific areas can also apply under this. Similarly, another area of research under which DBT provides funding is energy, environment, and bioresource based applications. And there are many special programs. Say, for example, biotechnology program for societal development, biotechnology career advancement and orientation program, biocare, it is for women scientists. So now let me highlight some of the programs. Say I'm a part of the task force in agriculture, animal and allied sciences. Also some of the task force related to special programs like biotechnology program for societal development. So this is a common platform in which project proposals from any background can be funded if it relates to societal development, say tribal development programs, then societal development programs in the area of medical biotechnology, agriculture, animal biotechnology, or societal development of any sort can be given support under the societal development program of biotechnology. There are around allocation of 30 to 40 crores per year for funding under this program. And there are always special allocations for the projects under Northeast also. So usually around 10% of the funding is given under societal development also towards the projects received from Northeastern region. Similarly, this program, Women Scientist Program BioCare, is available for only women scientists. So this can be available for not only those who are in prominent position in any institution of higher learning, but also it can be available for those who are not in service so far. Those who have completed PhD and waiting for getting a service, they can also submit project proposals from BioCare or Biotechnology Career Development under Women Scientist Program. So this is a very good program for women scientists. And again, there is a special allocation for the Northeast. Similarly, there are many NER-centric programs of the biotechnology department. So they are basically available for scientists across Northeast only. These are not available for any scientists outside the ambit of Northeast. So these are research projects to be submitted or initiated by Northeastern researchers. But of course, in some programs like Twinning program, you may also have collaboration with any research institute outside the Northeastern region also. So Twinning R&D program was launched around 5 years back. I am also a part of this program since beginning. And so far, more than 350 research projects have been given under this Twinning program alone. And every year, scientists across Northeast used to submit more than 500 research proposals under this program. So this is a very good program for the institution of Northeast. Similarly, another program, Northeast-centric program, is Units of Excellence in NER. This is given to scientists of Northeastern region below 40 years of age, those who are promising scientists in the area of biology, modern biology. Even there are certain scientists from general undergraduate colleges who have won Unit of Excellence. Under this, there is a funding towards not only research, but also towards organizing training programs and developing infrastructure in the colleges. So at least I know a few scientists, one scientist from say one college in Assam, from Hendik Girls College, who has won a very good project from chemistry department under Unit of Excellence program to the tune of 1.5 crores. Similarly, there are many other, around 14 scientists across the Northeastern region have already won project under this program. Similarly, another program is Network R&D program. Here, it is a multi-institutional program. Institutions of higher learning, maybe the colleges included, may gather together. Scientists working in a particular specific line can gather together and have a multi-institutional network program built and can submit directly to that Department of Biotechnology. So this is also open at all the time in the year. No call for proposal is usually given, but you can submit such kind of network multi-institutional program at any point of time on a specific subject area at any time to Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, particularly to the NERBPMC, Northeast Region Biotechnology Program Implementation Cell. Then another kind of program initiated by DBT is theme-based programs. So on a specific theme, the funding agency itself initiates certain programs. Similar kind of programs have been already initiated on different subject areas. One such program is running on tuberculosis, another on banana, another on citrus, another on duck, another on cancer, and many other such kind of theme-based programs are also running. So these kind of programs will come with a specific call for proposals, and you can submit. It is open for anybody, even workers who are working in general colleges can also submit proposal. I know many of the workers working in science colleges of Assam and other parts of the Northeast who have won this kind of program. Say one teacher from Pandu College had recently won a similar kind of program under the theme-based program on banana. Then DST, Department of Science and Technology, another department under the Ministry of Science and Technology, also fund research projects in all areas of sciences. As has been pointed out by Dr. Talukdar earlier, mostly they fund research in area of material science and engineering, but it is not restricted or confined to these two areas only. They also fund towards other areas also. Even in biology stream also, they used to have funding programs. There are many different funding programs under DST, but here I am highlighting some of the important programs under which you can ask for funding. One is Inspire program. This is for pursuing PhD under a special grant given to the budding scientist of the region. So under this, many students from Northeast have got a fellowship under the Inspire program, and there are reservations for Northeast as well as reservation for women scientists. So one can go for applying for under this program. Similarly, Science and Technology for Yoga and Meditation. This has been launched last year by DST. It's a special program for yoga and meditation, which is called Satyam. So anybody having expertise in yoga and meditation from any background, he may be from general science, it may be from humanities, or he may not be highly educated. Even then, one can submit yoga and meditation related, so to say, programs if he collaborates with some scientist having some concept or a component of science and technology in it. So this is under the program Satyam. Another program is Science and Technology program, SSTP program. I'm a member of the task force under this program. Now this is going on. So now this program is open for anybody within a state, but only thing is that the research proposals are to be routed through the State Science and Technology Council. I think you know we have also one council called STEC, Assam State Science, Technology and Environmental Council. So STEC itself provides funding to small research to the tune of around 5 lakhs or so. But you can also submit for big funding under SSTP program of DST through the Assam Science and Technology Council. So you discuss the matter with the scientist and the director of STEC, and you can have good proposal raised through them and submit it through them, and it will come under the SSTP program of DST. And under this also, more than 50 crores are usually given to the Science and Technology Councils in the states every year under this program. Similarly, for women scientists, there are 3 programs under DST, A, B, and C, and these are in different branches of science. Women Scientist program, A is for basic and applied sciences, then B is for science and technology interventions in societal benefit, then the C program is internship in intellectual property right, IPR, for self-employment. So these are the areas in which women scientists are specifically funded. Then under Ministry of Science and Technology, under DST, Department of Science and Technology, there is another funding agency separately created that is called Science and Engineering Research Board, SERB, Science and Engineering Research Board. I am also associated with this particular funding agency. So they do have different kind of programs under it: core research grant, startup research grant, startup grant for young scientists, intensification of research in higher priority areas, empowerment and equity opportunities for excellence in science, teachers associateship for science excellence or research excellence. This is one particular program which is available for higher secondary and college teachers specifically. They are teachers associateship for research excellence. So here you can take up small research programs to be carried forward for 1 year to 2 years under the guideship of a scientist in a research institute or any famous institute of the region or of the country, where you can pursue your research while continuing in service. You will be getting the salary as well as a very attractive stipend of around 25,000, probably now 25,000 per month extra, and also research grant to the tune of 2 lakhs for pursuing this research. This is a very good finding. While pursuing your normal course of activity as a teacher, you can pursue research side by side under this grant. Then Early Career Research Award, usually available for the early researchers who have joined some permanent service recently. They can get this funding. SERB Women Excellence Award, one-time grant below 40 years of age women. This is also available for those who are not in service. They can also avail this to pursue it for up to 5 years. Then UGC, I think I need not highlight what are the programs under which UGC provides funding, because as college teachers you are almost aware of all the different programs under which UGC is to fund. A number of funding programs are under UGC. They are available for all people from various backgrounds, including science, humanities, as well as commerce background. So I'm not going to detail about that. I think you know better than me, because as a person related to agricultural sciences or veterinary science, we are mostly related to biological funding. We are not related to UGC funding much. So I'll keep it to you. Please go through the website of UGC to get the information about UGC funding, and particularly I will highlight some of the important aspects. Say, for example, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan Postdoctoral Fellowship in Humanities and Spatial Social Sciences. This was launched in 2008-9, and it has been included under this. Even language is also included. Any person pursuing research would like to pursue research in the area of languages like Mother Indian language or English or Sanskrit or even Arabia can also apply under this program. Similarly, Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowship for SC and ST candidates, the Junior Research Fellowship Program under Engineering and Technology. Then there are many other programs under which one can ask for funding from UGC, besides the minor research proposals and major research proposals, which you are mostly acquainted to. Then there are many other national funding agencies under which you can apply for funding. Say, for example, Ministry of Human Resource and Development themselves have got a number of fundings available. Indian Council of Agricultural Research, if you are working directly or indirectly in any topic related to agriculture and allied sciences. But don't think that these are available only to agricultural universities. I know many people working in many other universities in the country from general UGC universities. They are having funding approved under ICAR. This is possible. Then ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, same is the case with ICMR. Life Science Research Board of the Defense Research Development Organization. So many of our colleagues from our college have got research granted from DRDO although it is under Defense Ministry, they used to provide funding for life science research also. Similarly, Ministry of Food Processing and Industries, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Ministry of Department of Atomic Energy, DAE, also used to provide funding. Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, Research in Nuclear Sciences, BRNS, also provides funding. Then at last, I'll tell you about the international funding resources. A number of international funding resources provide fund towards Indian scientists through different call for proposals. World Health Organization, Food and Agricultural Organization, Wellcome Trust, international collaborative grants with different agencies like Indo-US, Indo-Japan, then Indo-Bulgaria, then the Commonwealth program, then the similar kind of collaborative programs in many European countries, Indo-Canadian programs. There are many research programs, collaborative programs of Indian government with other government of Europe and Western countries are there, under which you can apply. Similarly, UNDP, United Nations Development Program, Bill Gates Foundation, it's a very resourceful funding agency now for many people. Then Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA, it is under Ministry of Defense, Government of US. Interestingly, each also provides funding towards research in biology to Indian scientists. I myself have applied recently for similar grant under this project. It is still pending for approval. Similarly, NIH, National Institute of Health, US government also offers funding to any kind of biological research, particularly in terms of medical research more commonly. So these are international funding agencies which also provide funding towards international research to Indian scientists. So at last, let me emphasize, as has been emphasized by Dr. Talukdar earlier, we should always remember failure is the pillar of success. You may not succeed in getting a grant after submission of one or two research projects, but try and try again. Don't lose heart. Every scientist in his lifetime has failed once or the other time in getting a research proposal granted. I myself have failed more than one time in getting a grant after successfully submitting proposal, and when I am also a member of the task force, even in that case I may not get a grant. So that depends upon many different factors. So you cannot always expect that when you are proposing a very good proposal, you will be always successful in getting the grant. So try and try again. There are many factors which govern success in getting a grant. Don't lose heart. Always continue your quest for success and excellence so that you can be successful at a point of time, because failure is the pillar of success. So with this, I conclude my speech. Before I conclude, I thank profusely the Honorable Principal of the college, Dr. Borkotoki, for giving me this opportunity, for sharing some of my thoughts with all of you. I am also thankful to Dr. Sutia as well as Dr. Farishta Yasmin for inviting me for delivering my lecture today. And I'm thankful to all of you, all the participants, for your patient hearing and active participation. Thank you very much. Thanks to Dr. Talukdar also for his inspiring speech. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for your very informative and fruitful speech. I myself learned a lot of things, how to prepare a effective project proposal for funding. Once again, thank you so much, sir. Now I